Here's Charlie Dickens, chapter 80, entitled Bob's Caravan. The ground was dry and it was lovely not to be covered in mud, thought Charlie. As unlike most boys, he hated being muddy. Tinker was still quiet, but at least he had regained a little spring in his step. Charlie hoped that Bob would bring him out of his shell and make him smile even for a moment. The woods looked so different in the mornings, and everything looked so fresh and beautiful, as if it had been varnished by a skilled hand. Look out, said Tinker, as a squirrel shot quickly up a tree with a nut tight in its paw. It won't bother us, said Charlie. It's too busy getting breakfast, he said, smiling. Then they crunched over the fallen twigs and the carpet of leaves. They arrived at the stream, and Charlie was the first to inch his way across the fallen tree. It was slippy, but it was the perfect ladder. When he got to the other side, he waved Tinker over. Tinker was still feeling sleepy, and he was worried about falling in. And when he got to the middle, he began to wobble like a ballerina. He looked down at the rushing water, and he was certain that at any moment he was bound to fall in. Then he heard a familiar voice, and he looked up at Charlie, but there was a figure behind him, and the figure was waving and smiling. Tinker squinted in the sun, and he was sure that he was mistaken, but the image of the figure became clearer, and to his amazement, it was his dad. But how could that be possible, he thought. His dad was waving and smiling and willing him on. Tinker looked at Charlie, but he didn't seem to notice, and Tinker kept his eyes on his dad's face. And he walked across the fallen tree without once looking down. He jumped onto the river bank and then looked up expectantly. Then his dad wasn't there. There was only Charlie looking and smiling at him. I knew you'd make it, he said. For a moment, Tinker wanted to tell him what he had seen, and then he thought better of it. As they walked along with only the soothing sounds of the birds, they were supplanted by the loud barking of Bob's two Alsatians. And hearing this, it didn't take long for Bob to open the door of his caravan, resplendent in a stained thermal vest and jogging bottoms splattered with tomato ketchup. Tinker wasn't impressed. At least his dad sometimes wore a suit, he thought snobbishly. Then Bob pulled out two big, greasy-looking sausages from his pockets, and he threw them to the dogs. This quietened them somewhat, and Tinker and Charlie were soon sitting in the caravan as quiet as two church mice.